Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, students. Just wanted to confirm whether my voice is audible. Good morning, all of you. Good morning, students, once again. I guess my voice is audible. I have rechecked. So, on that note, let me begin with today's session. Welcome all of you to Unacademy. So, we will be conducting, as usual, the session on the newspaper reading. Yesterday, due to some personal reasons, I was unable to conduct the newspaper session. So, today I'm going to analyze yesterday's paper. Later, later today at around 2 p.m. I'm going to do today's newspaper. From tomorrow onwards it will be normal with that the newspaper of that day on that day itself that has been missing for the last 2 days, but we'll get back to that trend. So I'm starting as usual with the Hindu newspaper, which is the most credible, the most reliable newspaper in this context. um, So, of course, the headline yesterday was about the launch of the Ram temple construction in Ayodhya. The Bhumi Pujan was, of course, set. It was a grand success yesterday. Mr. Modi, of course, the Prime Minister, was present along with the Chief Minister of the state, Yogi Adityanath, Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, and also the RSS chief, the Rashtra Swayam Sevak chief, Mr. Mohan Bhagwat. And they were all present, and of course, it went um, very successfully. Now, the next topic which I would like to discuss is about the H-1B visa. This is something I had told you day before yesterday about how the rates for H-1B visa and the L-1 visa have both been increased in the USA by the Trump administration. I had told you that there's a 21% increase in price of the H-1B visa, which is usually for students and those who are temporary residents, but for significant number of years. But taken yourself, the H-1B visa is sponsored by the person himself or herself. The other was the L-1 visa, which has seen a 75% hike. L-1 visa is sponsored by companies who have transferred their employees from another country. Indians tend to be the highest users. Maximum number of Indians are there under these two visas, especially in the H-1B visa. So that is just a quick recap. But Donald Trump, the president of the USA, he has actually barred the use of H-1B visa in the country for federal jobs. He does not want the pressure of non-American citizens on federal jobs. Federal jobs is government jobs in the US because it's a federal structure. Ours is a federal structure with a unitary bias. Theirs is a full-fledged federal structure. So they call the central government jobs as federal jobs. And H-1B visa has now been barred for people who are working in for government jobs. So government jobs will now be reserved for American citizens only. The National Association of Software and Service Companies, software, I think you would be aware, are amongst the largest recruiters of non-Americans or non-American citizens. So they have hit out. They are saying that this entire thing is based on um, some misconceptions which do not really hold true. So I wanted to actually start the session before I discuss Unacademy. Most of the sessions I start off discussing about Unacademy. So I have covered one topic, but now I will continue with the rest of the platform. So, moving on, further introducing to you about Unacademy. We are India's largest online learning platform, including in CAT and the management exams, but also we are big in NEET, JEE, UGC NET, Bank PO, SSC, number of different exams. We have been the leaders. This is a brief profile of myself. My name is Aritro Dasgupta. So I'm an MBA in Forest Management from the Indian Institute of Forest Management in Bhopal, a really unique institution. Someday I'll discuss about that in detail. I've got a decade's experience, more than a decade, in fact, right now running. So mostly into teaching. I've taught in different areas, in colleges, online, um, abroad through an online method, through in coaching. I've taken specific one-off training sessions in schools, worked with a training company as well. I've worked in strategy consulting and in content writing as well. So, in terms of strategy consulting, I do have clients with whom I work. I lend my expertise to them. Content writing is basically getting yourself published in different areas. So, I have been published in some of the leading academic journals and magazines in India, as well as a trade magazine abroad, for whom I'm actually writing now once again. Been experienced in India, worked for a while in the Middle East, been published in the USA. My sessions have been recorded in Nigeria for a university. So last 5 years, I have formally been in this coaching segment. Some of the toppers in the country for different exams have been my students, and I'm sure this year as well that trend will continue. So what you're gonna get from the Unacademy platform, a couple of things which I wanted to highlight. First of all, you get daily live classes. I think that is a huge advantage. So even if you've missed out my class, of course you have live classes every day. I have been taking on a daily basis. If by mistake someday I do miss out, I tend to make up the next day. I have a rest of the team as well. We have our entire channel called Let's Crack Management Exams, where we get classes from different educators. We also have live tests and quizzes here. Just to show you how it works, let me just quickly show you the chat windows. On the right side of the page, you can see where my cursor is. There is a live chat window, so all of you can actually type out your information here, any questions you have, and I will also keep asking queries to you guys. The course content is structured from the head office, which is in Bengaluru, the Silicon Valley of India. All the IT companies tend to be there, including the edtech companies. We educators can keep improvising as well. And of course, students get unlimited access. I always call Unacademy as a Netflix of education. The moment you have enrolled once, you can keep on viewing sessions again and again. Typically in the offline mode, what used to happen is if you've missed one class, then you've basically missed it. You need a backup, or you ask your friends or whatever. But now, even if you've missed out a live session, you can keep watching the recorded session. So there's our channel, as you can see at the bottom where my cursor is. Let's Crack Management Exam. So if you click on this, you will get all of our sessions by the different educators. I'll just show that to you as well. You can download the sessions, or you can view the archives of the past sessions. These are some of our leading educators. You can take a look at some of their names. Yeah, so these are some of the things. Basically, this is the live sessions for today, and there are other sessions also going on live by other educators like Rajul. And of course, if I click on videos, you will notice all my previous sessions. For example, the newspaper reading of 4th, of 2nd, of the 31st, how to develop a reading habit. And I took some monthly current affairs sessions on May current affairs, so you can take a look at these as well. Of course, my colleagues like Rajul, they have also taken n number of sessions, so you can go through all of these. Right, so even if you've missed out live sessions, please do watch them on the repeat mode. Right, that was just to show you. This, of course, is a list of some of our leading educators. You can check out the number of watch minutes they have and the followers they have. I'm sure this is a slightly older data, so by now it has increased even more. These are some of our other key educators. You can see their names as well. And this is just to show you a sample of how you receive the notifications online from the company itself on the unacademy.com platform. These are some of the names, as you can take a look. Okay, this is again a sample of notifications just to let you know how things work. So, for example, if you need classes for, let's say, profit and loss, then you can log on to a 4 p.m. class. Likewise, that was for single classes. This is for entire batches. So, for example, the one starting on April 12th, it did start. It has now gone quite far ahead. So you need a complete syllabus batch for that. Likewise, below you can see the courses starting on. So of course, this is, as I said, just a sample. This is how you will receive your notifications. As I told you, we have a schedule that works for you. One thing I did not tell you as yet, but I'm going to share now, is something which is really unique about us, is that language should never be a barrier for learning, which is why we are present in a total of 16 different languages, including English, Hindi, Malayalam, and Tamil, and 12 more languages. So learning should never be a barrier with you guys. You can keep interacting with your educators to get your doubts cleared. I think I told you. So on the right hand side, you can see my cursor. Any points you have, please feel free to ask me, and I will be happy to answer your queries as well. We have live polls as well, which is more relevant for the unacademy.com classes. Maybe not here, but even here it can be done. I told you about quizzes and tests. These are based on the real exam pattern. So there are live quizzes which we take. Apart from this, there are centralized tests which are based on the real exam pattern. In this case, of course, with CAT. My classes have detailed PDFs, not the newspaper series, because then the newspaper itself is the PDF. But for the other sessions, I believe tomorrow I have a session on Indian polity. So there I will introduce to you exactly how things work. That will be a detailed PDF, don't worry. You also get detailed report and analysis. All these mock tests that you take, you will need get a complete analysis of where you stand versus the rest of the country's competition. So you can see this graph here. You even get your exact time per question. As you can see, this person, which is just a sample, is 1 minute 34 seconds. Likewise, you get the entire time spent per question. I want you guys to take a look at this. At the bottom, you have my code, which is AT09. The code on this page is incorrect. It's written DAS1. That's not right. Please use this code AD09. So you can go for the 1-year program. In that case, the one on the left is better. If it's a 2-year program, you go for the one on the right. A lot of youngsters who are in first year college, they would start preparing from now on itself. For them, the 24-month thing is ideal. Right, I hope you've all taken a look. So you can clearly see that for a month, it sounds cheaper overall, but per month cost is much higher. The longer the program you take, it gets less expensive. So on that note, I have finished the introduction on Unacademy. Now I will start with today's content, which is the newspaper. Let's start as usual with the Hindu newspaper. Later, I will also move to the Times of India. Right, so of course, the UPSC results also came out few days back. So the paper is full of congratulations to some of the toppers of the country. More on that a little later. I told you about two things. One was the launch of the construction of the Ram Mandir. The other was about the H-1B visa being banned from federal jobs in the USA. So there's good news for a couple of two Indians. They have been freed by the Taliban. They were abducted in 2018. They have now been freed as part of a gesture. So there was a meeting of the Loya Jirga, or the elders, called by the president of Afghanistan, Ashraf Ghani. And so this is part of an exchange between the government of Afghanistan and the Taliban, which is fighting against the government right now. Right, so the Ministry of External Affairs has announced their return. So there's an IRS officer. His name has come out. I told you that we'll discuss about the top performers in these exams. So Pradeep Singh has actually topped. He was already a government officer. He was part of the IRS, the Indian Revenue Service. 29 years old. He's from Haryana. Many congratulations to him for topping one of the probably the toughest exam, possibly in the world. I mean, if not just in India. I'll move on to the local pages, the city pages, because there isn't too much on the first page. As you can understand, a lot of ads due to the achievements of the UPSC. Mm, so, little bit on the local news, which I don't want to get into. Mm, Okay, the ambassador of South Korea. South Korea, you must understand, was one of the first countries to be affected by COVID 19 because obviously it is right next to China. But South Korea is also one country which worked phenomenally well to contain the early spread of the pandemic. Right. So the ambassador of South Korea, which is Mr. Shin Bong Kil, he has. I'm assuming I'm not sure though. So he has actually praised the chief minister of Delhi, Mr. Arvind Kejriwal, for the Delhi model, the way in which COVID-19 has been contained in the city state. So the chief minister of Delhi has thanked the ambassador for the congratulatory message. There is some important news which I want to discuss with you regarding one of India's top universities, which is the JNU, Jawaharlal Nehru University. Regularly tops or is among the top three of a lot of rankings which are released by the MHRD, which is Ministry of Human Resource Development, which will soon be renamed as Ministry of Education now after the new education policy. So JNU, of course, because it's such a top university and it gets along with some of the other national universities. So we have several national universities which are not under the purview of any state government but under the center's purview. So this is going to get a fresh dose of investment. So this is something I wanted to discuss with you. A couple of years back, a new board was created called the HEFA. Please note this down. Capital letters. This is a short form HEFA, which stands for Higher Education Funding Agency. So this was started in 2018. So just to go back a little bit, until say till the end of 2017, the entire funding for higher education came from UGC. So either it was a private university which got money through private means or through donations, through its own money, through fee, whatever. That is one part. But all the government institutions at the center and also the state, but especially the ones at the center, they were funded by UGC, which is University Grants Commission. So the UGC took out a list, and from there the funding was done. But it was decided that UGC alone may not be able to meet the funding of so many institutions, right? And this has been in theory for the last decade. It's not something which overnight propped up in 2017-18. Some of you might remember how the IIMs were accorded autonomy. They were deemed as institutes of national importance. Some others were called institutes of eminence. So when you get an INI or an IOE tag, it means that you can take decisions on your own regarding the curriculum and the pedagogy. You don't have to always toe the line of the UGC or an AICT or any other central board. Funding as well, they could do on their own. You might remember back in the days, IIMs used to be pretty cheap. Then they raised their prices a lot. That's because they became autonomous and stopped relying on UGC funding. So this has been in the works for several years. I would say probably a decade, since it was realized that government should not be funding everything, but government should be the facilitator, not the funding agency. In fact, this was also mentioned by Mr. Gurcharan Das in one of the articles few days back, which I read out to you from the newspaper as one of the suggestions. So the HEFA was introduced in 2018. This is again an autonomous board which gets money from the government, which is the Ministry of HRD, but also from other sources, including donations. So now there is a proper, okay. Going into another field, there is something called CSR. Have you heard of CSR? I'm sure you've all heard of CSR, which is corporate social responsibility. So every company earning money beyond a certain figure is expected to donate a certain percentage towards CSR. CSR could be into social welfare, it could be into women and girl child welfare, it could be into environment. That's another important field. for older people. But one of the popular ways is to do it in education. So sometimes companies are loaded with a lot of money, they want to pay or they have to pay. Universities also need money, but there is no direct link between the two. So this is often confusing. So that is why the HEFA was set up in 2018 to be a proper player, a mediator between private companies and universities or colleges all over the country. They would not rely purely on private funding, but this was one of the means. In fact, there's also something called philanthropy, which is not CSR, but people who are super rich and they donate a part of their wealth into educational practices, because obviously education is one of the key nation building activities. So that was the task of the HEFA, and now HEFA, one of its major investments this year is going to be at the JNU. So that is for 455.02 crore rupees. That is the entire amount. And where is it? How is it going to be used? So JNU requires a new infrastructure. If anybody's been inside JNU, they will know it has, generally speaking, amazing infrastructure with a lot of greenery. However, it's a little old school in the sense that a lot of the buildings were, of course, created long back. So they need some new, funding. So what is going to happen? I'm going to read out to you. This 455.02 crore for construction of new academic buildings, hostels, research center, and installation of an integrated and unified ERP system, which is enterprise resource planning. Mm, so the Vice Chancellor of JNU, Mr. Jagdesh Kumar, could be doctor, I'm not sure, but let's say Shri Jagdesh Kumar, he has announced this thing that this new schools and special centers will now be set up. Some of you might be aware that a few years back JNU started its management school as well. In fact, that's one of the places you could all try. Although of course it's not yet in the elite category, but it can be considered. Um, a new academic building will also be set up. This will be called the School of Engineering. That is one of them, will be the School of Engineering. Another will be Atal Bihari Vajpayee School of Management and Entrepreneurship. So as I said, management and entrepreneurship is also going to play a part very soon. So there are other projects as well. Uh, Okay, there are two more new facilities which will be set up. One is the AIRF, which is Advanced Instrumentation Research Facility. So that's one, and the other is Advanced Animal Research Facility. So a lot of this is going into research, of course. The Advanced Animal Research Facility, again, I'll read out, will be useful for carrying out research on communicable, non-communicable, and rare diseases, including infectious agents such as COVID 19. University gets applications from more than a lakh of candidates every year, but barely 2,000 of them are selected into the different courses. So this is a very big announcement and a big investment as well. Right. Moving on from here, there's news from New Delhi. COVID tests, as you have been probably aware, there does seems to be light at the end of the tunnel. The cases in Delhi, the positive cases and the fatalities have come down drastically in the city state. So in fact, tests have also fallen by 50% in the city. 674 new cases have been reported, but the total number of active cases for the first time in a long time have reduced to below 10,000. Okay, so I had earlier told you about a week back, if I remember correctly, that the police is also facing trouble right now because the number of jails or lockups has reduced, because the number of jails where convicts or under trials can be kept has been reduced, because a lot of these facilities do not allow for social distancing. So there were two of them. One is Tihar and the other I can't recall. These were the two ones which have been used by the police for a while now, but now there is a third going to be added. So the police quarters at Mandoli, which is actually meant to house police personnel, as you can understand, it's a quarter, but this will now serve as a temporary jail. It can have a capacity for 1,800 inmates. This was chosen because there was significant social distancing with the people, among themselves. So this order was issued on 31st of July. Right, moving on to some of the other states, moving on to north and east of the country. The Hooch tragedy has been brewing in Punjab for a while now. I have told you that the number of deaths has now crossed 100. The Akalis had been, which is Shiromani Akali Dal, the political party in opposition, they had been protesting against the ruling Congress party, but now Aam Aadmi Party, which is actually the principal opposition in the Punjab Assembly, they have also started a protest now, led by some of the leaders, including the lone party MP, Mr. Bhagwat Mann. Okay, now there is a really important piece of news and a heartening piece of news, though also there are more challenges, but there is some good news from the northeast of the country. In fact, the complete corner of the northeast, corner of the country in a remote part of the state of Arunachal Pradesh. So what has happened in Arunachal is that there is a certain corner of the state, which I'm going to mention, that part has now received 2G network for the first time ever. 2G to us might sound old world, but this is actually big news. So a little bit on this. So this place is called Vijayanagar, which is right on the corner of Arunachal Pradesh. Gets its first 2G network. It still awaits electricity though. So this tower has been set up by, again, government body PSU, BSNL. You will notice, many of you, whenever you are in remote regions, the private companies may or may not work, but BSNL is always there. So BSNL has set up tower, but stronger solar powered batteries are awaited via the IAF, which is the Indian Air Force, their sorties when the weather clears up. Weather is not clear right now. It is raining quite a bit in this state. So where exactly is Vijayanagar? It is actually right at the heart of tiger country. One needs to walk for minimum 6 to 7 days through tiger country to reach this remote outpost. Very few people stay here. 4,500 is the entire population of this region. It's part of the Changlang district, which is close to the Myanmar border. The euphoria was short-lived because they still don't have electricity. But the solar-powered batteries that ran the Seoul Tower with a coverage radius of 5 kilometers crashed within 48 hours. So a tower was set up, but this crashed within 48 hours because you still don't have electricity. Right, because the battery backup wasn't strong enough. So this will now be provided from the Jorhat district of Assam. This was mentioned by the additional deputy commissioner of this region, Mr. T. Rumi, who's based in the nearest town of Miao. This Vijayanagar is, I mean, it's the nearest town, but it's more than 150 kilometers away from Miao, and one needs to trek through the Namdapha Tiger Reserve, which is one of the largest national parks in the northeast of the country, which with a total area of nearly 2,000 square kilometers. That's how big the Namdapha is. Arunachal is generally quite a big state with a very low population and population density, but size is pretty big. I think it's 12th or 13th biggest among the Indian states. So roughly halfway, but population is very less. The least densely populated state in India. It's a temporary setback, says the deputy commissioner, Mr. Devanish Yadav. He says that the electricity should soon be powered once again. Right. So the community that resides here mainly is the Lishu community, who first came into contact with mainland Indians in 1961 during an expedition by the Assam Rifles, which was then led by the Inspector General, Mr. A.S. Guraya. Right, so quite a bit of story there, but of course more needs to be done. Okay, now in Odisha, a new initiative is going to be set up very soon. Odisha government is going to promote cage fishing. What exactly is cage fishing for all of you? So cage fishing is where within rivers, or it actually works very well in the ocean. So large cages are set up, which basically capture the fish. but then they are not brought out into onto the surface. They remain underwater. The cages don't have a lot of spacing so that they can't escape into the sea, but this allows them to breed into bigger fishes because they are actually fed there. This is something which works a lot in the Mediterranean Sea. Why the Mediterranean Sea? Let me give you a little bit. Japan is one of the world's largest consumers of seafood, and one of Japan's favorite fishes is actually the tuna. Japan has rich fishing grounds, but there has been overfishing. So now they can't rely solely on local production, which is why they have to rely on other countries. So from Spain and Italy, this cage fishing is done, which is then brought on the ocean, on the Mediterranean Sea. So their massive sized tunas are produced, they are bred, and they are shipped to Japan after that. Right, so this is going to be a really important one. So I'll just read out a little bit. In cage fishing, cages are set up inside a water body and fish are stocked, fed and harvested at the appropriate time. So that what happens with the other form, traditional form of fishing or mechanized form of fishing, which is even more destructive, is that fishes of all sizes come out. Some of them could be really small, some could be pregnant. So that leads to indiscriminate. They also pick up fishes which are not edible or other creatures that are not edible. They also tend to come up, they die. So it leads to a lot more destruction than than what is aimed at. For controlled fishing, this is an ideal method. The small fishes can be released so that they can grow or they can continue there and until they become bigger. Also pregnant fishes, they can be spared so that they can have hatchlings which grow further. So it's actually very good for human consumption, and at least in the short run for the animals as well, the fishes. So this will be done by the government. It will be set up by the government, primarily in the Hirakud Reservoir. That will be the initial pilot. Then they will move into the oceans. But for this, they have asked for statement of interest from private parties, which will be the contractors. The health secretary of the country, he has, and also the director general, Mr. Balram Bhargav, who's the director general of the ICMR, and the health secretary, Mr. Rajesh Bhushan, they have clarified that about half of only 50 districts in India. India has, I believe, about 700 odd districts, but these 50 districts alone account for 66% of the key load. And in fact, 82% of the cases are restricted to 10 states alone. So these areas have to be given particular focus. Which are these 10 states? Punjab, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Haryana, Assam, West Bengal, and Karnataka. They have a positivity rate of less than 10%, so around 8.89%. Two indigenous vaccines, of course, are now being tried. I've told you before, one is Covaxin, which is by Bharat Biotech, and the other is by Zadis Cadila, which will soon begin this phase 2 trials. The number of rapid antigen tests have really gone up. These are known as rapid antigen, where about a fourth to about a third of all the tests in the country are now actually the rats. Here, the samples are collected very quick. There is a slight error percentage, but that has to be made up for, because now we need to test a lot of people. So that's about a third of the total tests in the country are now part of this methodology. Right, there is quite a bit of political news on page 9, and also about the reactions of different political parties towards the Ram Mandir construction. By and large, it has been positive towards that. Mr. Kamal Nath, former Union Minister, recently outgoing Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, as well as Mr. Bhupesh Baghel, who's the present Chief Minister of Chhattisgarh, they have both hailed the event. Right. I've been telling you about rains in flooding in Assam, in Bihar. But now, and also about Kerala, some districts of Kerala I spoke to you about a week back. But now Mumbai is also facing heavy rain, so government offices have again been closed. Water logging has taken place. In fact, a boat has capsized with two fishermen missing. This is off the coast of North Mumbai. Moving into the editorial page, again, there's a lot of information on the Ram Mandir construction. I think I had told you earlier, anything dealing with religion or politics is usually kept out of group discussions and VAT in most of the entrance exams. And so that is why I'm not going too deep into it. For you guys, business and economy is of far greater importance. You might notice that about a day or two back, I spoke to you about the index of the 8 core sectors. That, for instance, is of far greater significance to your exam preparation. So I'm not getting too much into the 1 year of Article 370 being removed in Kashmir. Just go through the economic factors of that, the business impact, the fallout, what has happened, good, bad, ugly, whatever, that's up to you. But just go through that, as well as about the temple construction. You can look at how the construction is going to take place, but nothing will be too political or around religion in any of these exams. So that is something you can look into. Karnataka, which was once seen as a star state in terms of COVID-19 fight, however, is suffering now more than 6,000 cases on last Sunday. Kerala has seen another 3 deaths. Andhra Pradesh, nearly 10,000 cases every day, fresh cases. I told you about Mr. Yeddurappa, the Chief Minister of Karnataka, who has tested positive for COVID-19. Joining him now is Mr. Siddaramaiah, who was the Chief Minister, the Congress Chief Minister, 2013 to 18. He has also tested positive now. We really hope for a speedy recovery of both Mr. Yeddurappa and Mr. Siddaramaiah. But right now they are both suffering from COVID-19. Situation seems stable otherwise. But there is some sad news from Odisha, from the a three-time MLA from the Bhadrachalam area. He's the leader of the CPIM, the Communist Party of India, Marxist. His name is Mr. Sunnam Rajaya. He has passed away. Not from Odisha, I'm sorry, from Telangana. There is some news on the Hawala cases. We'll probably discuss Hawala and money laundering some other day. Okay, now I'm going to discuss a very important piece of news with you guys. Have you heard of this organization, FATF? FATF. Has anybody heard? In fact, it's interesting that I was just speaking about Hawala a while back, and this is actually related to money laundering. So let me put out this thing here itself, FATF. Let me see if anybody is aware of this terminology. Even if you're not watching the session live, please think about it. I do occasionally take 30-second breaks maybe with my phone. Uh, I guess you will also get breathing space with that. I think that's good for you guys as well. So what is FATF? Once again, let me put it. It is Financial Action Task Force. Very important international group. They are primarily into looking into money laundering and how different nations are using. So what exactly is money laundering? Money laundering is when there are huge quantities of black money that is being converted into white or legal money through small parcels. The idea is that when there are lower payments, it is actually mixed and diluted with a lot of genuine white money. So that way the black money is not caught easily. And also FATF is used for primarily to control money laundering through military means or terrorism, because a lot of terrorism, of course, cannot be an official business in any country, which is why any of the terror spending often takes place through this money laundering route. In fact, hawala money, you might be aware, India is connected to the Middle East and Pakistan. There have been n number of scandals in the past about the Hawala thing. Pakistan is one of the centers. So FATF is very important for India and Pakistan. Let me get into to that. So FATF also gives out different lists. So one is the grey list. Grey list means you are. So one is the clean list or the white list. India is there. India is not considered much of a threat. Grey list means that you are almost there in the bad list category, and you might create troubles. Blacklist is when you're completely bad. For India, Pakistan remaining on the grey list is actually quite good for us. Till they are on the grey list, they will at least externally, at least to the world, try to give out a good image of itself. The moment it is on black, it will not care. Then the country will once again completely go into the hands of some of the fundamentalist elements. So for India, grey list is probably good, but India still keeps pushing the FATF that Pakistan can be put into the blacklist. So in fact, the next very soon there's going to be an FATF meet, and India wants to highlight Pakistan's inaction. India will talk about the Pulwama tragedy 2019, the Daniel Pearl case, which was more than a decade back, and also 26/11 attacks in again more than a decade back. So this will be a meeting in October. So Pakistan needs to prove, according to India, that how they have not been, they have taken strict action against this. There are lots of international terrorists wanted by different countries. Pakistan is not releasing them, especially from organizations such as the LET or the Lashkar-e-Toiba. So a little bit into some of the names. Some of the accused persons are Mazhar Iqbal, Sajid Mir, Abu Kahafa, and Abdul Rahman Hashim Sayyad. These are some of the names which have been suggested to be extradited to other countries. The Sindh High Court is based in Karachi. So they have mentioned that there is no exact proof. So a lot of these members have been acquitted and they're not being transferred to other countries as per this report. So that is something India will be pressing the FATF hard on. Saudi Arabia, by the way, is also an important member of FATF. They joined a few years back. Saudi for long was an isolated country, but since Mohammed bin Salman came into the fore, he has been opening up the country quite a bit. So Pakistan has actually released an absurd map. I'll discuss about this in a little greater detail maybe tomorrow, because there's something I wanted you guys to understand. So there's actually an absurd map Pakistan has released, including whole of JNK, even Junagadh and some other parts. So this is something which is quite odd. Now, Pakistan's foreign minister, Mr. Shah Mahmood Qureshi, is being questioned by Indian authorities for this thing. So there is a very important story at the bottom. We've been speaking about the 4-year graduation, which will soon start as per the NEP. So there is this report. Delhi University did it for 1 year, 4-year undergraduate program, FYUP, which ended up becoming pretty unpopular. I believe the person's name is Mr. Dinesh Singh, who was the person behind this. So then this thing became quite unpopular, this entire move. But now for the entire country, this 4-year graduation will take up. So there are these reports suggesting that Delhi's support should be, Delhi University's expertise, when it did it for 1 year, 4 years actually, because whoever got into that particular year would have done it for 4 years. So that will be taken into account. Their experience should be taken into account so that there is smooth handling all over the country. There is a really sad report from the UN regarding the pandemic, and it says that 24 million children are at risk of dropping out of school. This is in India alone. And worldwide, about 1.5 billion learners have been affected in some way or the other. So it says that 86% of children at the primary level have been effectively out of school in poor countries, compared to only a fifth in the developed countries. So what's happening is whatever number of children were enrolled in schools, according to this report, only 14% of them are continuing with their education right now because of the online restrictions. Online is not available to millions of people all over the country. So, all those who are accessing my session, please consider yourself fortunate and do make maximum use, not just mine, but our entire channel. Let's crack management exams, which I showed you. So that, of course, is a sortie, but I did not mean to distract from this, which is a really sad case as per the UN. We have been discussing over the last 2 years something really important regarding TikTok, and I'm not talking of the India ban alone. That, of course, is one part, but also if you guys recall the previous sessions, I had spoken to you about the US wanting to ban it, and especially Microsoft wanting to acquire the TikTok, not the main one, which is owned by ByteDance, a Chinese company, but its versions in USA, in Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Microsoft is primed to buy that. So there is a lot of fallout after this. So Microsoft has been given a total of about 6 weeks by the Trump administration to firm up the investment. Meanwhile, China has accused, we tend to accuse China of bullying, but now China accuses USA of bullying through the TikTok mechanism. It says that TikTok is a global company, so this USA is trying to affect the business. That's what China says. Now, there is a White House advisor. I will read out to you his name, Mr. Peter Navarro. He, however, states that Microsoft could now divest China holdings. So the US government is very keen that Microsoft acquires TikTok, but they do understand there could be a massive fallout because Microsoft has a lot of businesses in mainland China and in Hong Kong. So this could end up hurting those businesses. So Microsoft should quickly divest its Chinese holdings. Right? He further reiterates how the Chinese parent poses a risk because of the personal data the company handles. Moving into Europe, on the other side of the Atlantic, Spain had a king, Juan Carlos. He had to leave his monarchy due to a massive embezzlement, $100 million worth corruption scandal. It's huge, $100 million. He has now fled to that country called Dominican Republic, which is in the Caribbean Sea, a former Spanish colony and right now a Spanish-speaking country as well. Al Jazeera, which is a Qatar-based news agency, one of the top news channels on TV, they claim that their office in Malaysia has been raided by tax authorities, but they said there could be some political reasons for that. Mike Pompeo, who's the Secretary of State of the USA, wants the Hong Kong protesters to be protected because they are fighting for democracy, which China is not allowing, according to him. There were some attacks by Hezbollah, which is a terror outfit based in Lebanon. So there were some attacks by them on Israel. So the Israeli Prime Minister, Mr. Netanyahu, has warned Hezbollah of some revenge. Sri Lanka would be going to polls. It did go yesterday, so I'll discuss about that today when I take up the next session, which is at 2 p.m. So 196 legislators are now to be elected out in a house of 225. 29 will not be done now. So the Rajapaksas are looking to get a complete stranglehold of the country's polity. There is report about some of the thinkers behind Xi's hardline, Xi Jinping, the president of China. So one of them is Mr. Tian Feilong. They are apparently among the main advisors to President Xi on the aggressive stance that China has now taken up. Moving on to the business page, which has been quite negative over the last couple of months, but often it is mixed as well. There are some positive news that do come up. I'll start today's business session on a slightly more positive note. So the Union Commerce Minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal, who's also the Railway Minister, he says that Commerce and Industry Minister, that's the whole ministry's name, he says that July exports near last year's level. This is really encouraging because the general consensus within the business world is that because our economy is flagging, exports would be lower, especially high quality exports would be lower. But Mr. Goel, who's the top authority in this, has clarified that may not be the case. The exports are nearly as good as last year's level. So the worst may be over, hopefully. And there's another report which is coming out from the finance ministry, which says there's actually an economic affairs department within the finance ministry which brought out a macroeconomic report in July. So they are saying that recovery prospects are fragile, but agriculture could be the one to blunt this impact of COVID-19, because the rains have been fairly good and they should further improve. And generally, agriculture is about 15% of the total GDP. But this year, that 15% will probably have to play an even bigger part. That's what the finance ministry's report clarifies. I'm going to come to HDFC in a while because that is big news for the day. But a little bit more, Mr. N. Chandrasekharan, who's the head of the Tata Sons, he wants greater digitization within the organization. Sensex has actually gone 2% up, thanks primarily to a couple of sectors, which is automobile, banks, and energy. In fact, Reliance Industries Limited has actually gone up by 7%. HDFC, this is not the HDFC news I want to discuss, but on a side note, HDFC has risen by 4%. HDFC and RIL are among the three biggest companies in the country, along with TCS. Maruti, one of the worst hit. I mean, the entire automobile sector has been real badly hit. Maruti is no exception. They are saying, however, that by 2021, the second half of 2020 of the financial year 21. So that basically means, let me put it, April to June is the first quarter, July, August, September is the second quarter. The third quarter, because there are four total, third quarter begins in October. So October will start the second half of the next financial year, which is 2021. So he expects that from October this year, so October 2021. So that's well away from us, but still the projections have to be out. They feel that by 2021 it should improve. This has been announced by the chairperson, Mr. R.C. Bhargav, who's the chairperson of Maruti. By 2021 October, sales should once again pick up. Now, IRDAI, which is the regulatory body for Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India, they have clarified that life insurers can also issue e-documents. Now, moving on to a really important story. I've got 4-5 really important stories on business today. So one of them refers to one of the pharmaceutical giants of the country, which is Sun Pharmaceutical. Let me just hear my voice again. Right, my voice is audible. Need to just keep checking from time to time. So Sun Pharmaceuticals has come out with the cheapest drug to combat COVID-19. Let me read out a few points. So they have come out with a new drug called FluGuard. Its technical name is Favipiravir 200 mg. This is priced at only 35 rupees a tablet. Now, little bit on the Favipiravir. This is actually the only drug that has been approved by the government for treating moderate cases of COVID-19. So not the really heavy ones which require hospitalization, but the ones which are moderate, which one can expect to be cured on your own when you have house quarantine rather than institutional one. So Glenmark, which is of course an international company, they came up with FabiFlu, which is available at 75 rupees a tablet. This is down from rupees 103 a tablet when it was introduced some time back. So Favipiravir is the only, I'll read out to you only antiviral treatment approved in India for the mild to moderate cases. The CEO of Sun Pharma, Mr. Kirti Ganorkar, who's in fact the CEO for the India business line. They also have a lot of international business. So within India, he says that we are launching FluGuard at an economical price to make the drug accessible to more and more patients, thereby reducing their financial burden. So really hope it works out. In fact, in today's paper, there is news of 2 more companies which will also be producing the Favipiravir under a different name, of course, because their name is FluGuard. So these two will have a different name. So I need to check that out. When I take the 2 p.m. session, I'll discuss that with you. There is a little bit of disturbing news regarding the cess collection. Cess is something which is not the same as a tax. Do you guys know the difference between a tax and a cess? Anybody aware? Let me put out the question. Even if you're watching the session recorded, you can always get back to me on this. What is a tax and what is a cess? Right. So, tax is basically something which is once introduced, it does not stop until there is an intervention. Cess, on the other hand, is time defined from day one. It will be for a year, 2 years, 6 months, whatever it has to be defined. Also, tax once collected, it can be used for n number of functions. It can be used for the military, education, healthcare, environment protection, renewable energy, building roads, trains, whatever. That is up to you. On the other hand, cess is specifically for one task. So if there's a Swachh Bharat cess or there is a education cess, that amount can only be used. Whatever is collected can only be used for Swachh Bharat. If it's a Swachh Bharat cess, I think there was a Krishi Kalyan cess a few years back. As the name suggests, that is for Kalyan or development of Krishis, who are farmers, basically. So cess is actually hurting a lot of states. What has happened is, due to the COVID-19 cess that was introduced on alcohol, such as beer, wine, and liquor, spirits, that has affected the overall consumption because the price has gone up. Now, few states which had introduced, like Delhi, they have now slashed that COVID cess. So just a bit of background on this. When it was first introduced, alcohol, some states did try to have alcohol because states were not having much money. There was a lot of dependence on the central government, so they did try to push for alcohol to be kept open during the lockdown, but the central government was not keen on this. So after the third lockdown, which started on 3rd May, a lot of states did start, and initially there was a massive rush. So, looking into the massive rush, a lot of the states introduced this Corona cess because to ensure social distancing, and in some states it was as high as 60 to 70%. So, a lot of the companies did suffer during this period, and that has led to an overall two things have come up. One is the overall cess collection has been much less than what was expected. So some of the figures are quite alarming. Karnataka has suffered a 33% contraction in cess collection from last year. Karnataka, of course, home to Bengaluru, which is probably microbrewery hub of the country. The city has so many microbreweries with a lot of creative products being created in many of them. So that way, this is quite problematic, this lack of collection. This is for the 2 month period for May and June. Rajasthan's excise shrank to 697 crore from 857 a year back for the month of May. Odisha too has cut the corona cess from 50% to 15%. Delhi has rolled it back completely. The other fallout of this corona cess has been the market for illicit liquor. We saw the case in Punjab where more than 100 people have died, but there could be other states as well where something likewise has taken place. So Rishi Chawla, who is Vice President Corporate Affairs at Carlsberg, India, he says whenever the prices go up, because a lot of people can't afford the more expensive alcohol, they resort to illicit liquor, which could be through through a black market, or it could be through bootleggers in the black market. It could also be through illicit liquor, which is not really the right liquor. So there could be poisonous elements in that, right? So that could be a massive issue. Something similar we are seeing in Punjab, of course. So this is one big economic news for the day. Please take a look at that. The securitization volume has actually dropped as per the ICRA, which is the leading credit rating agency in India. There was this rumor mongering regarding the large e-business companies such as Flipkart, Amazon, and Snapdeal. There was the thing that they would come under a new consumer law ambit. However, it has been clarified by the officials that this is not only applicable for them, but the new consumer law ambit will actually include every B2C online player. Everybody who are part of the business to consumer online sector. Toyota, which is probably the world's, I mean, it was the world's leading car maker. I don't know where exactly they are now, if they're number one, but they would be in the top two or three at the least. Toyota, which is the Japanese company, they will be offering a new SUV. It's a compact SUV, not complete SUV, but a compact SUV called the Urban Cruiser. So they will be directly in competition with Maruti Suzuki's Vitara Brezza and also with Hyundai's Venue and Tata Motors' Nexon. So that will be a four-pronged competition for the compact SUV market very soon. They are planning to release this by Diwali. Okay, there is this group called IHCL, which stands for Indian Hotels Company Limited. They have launched, so they are the group that handles Taj, Vivanta, and Selections brand of hotels. They have launched a new online portal called the iZest, which stands for IHCL Zero Touch Service Transmission. The idea of this is a suite of digital solutions to ensure social distancing, so that all the processes such as check-in, ordering of food, or payments, it can all be done in their hotel brands through this app. So this will reduce the human to human touch significantly. ITC, which is of course one of the leading FMCG producers in the country, its CMD, Mr. Sanjeev Puri, has called for a look by the central government on all the FTAs. FTA stands for Free Trade Agreements. ITC feels that a lot of these FTAs may be misplaced and are not doing the work they were supposed to be doing. Now, there's some important news from the RBI. Whenever the RBI is in the news, you need to keep a track, especially finance aspirants, because obviously RBI is the regulator for all the banks in the country, and the monetary policy is also produced by them. So TCS and two other tech companies, they have been shortlisted as vendors for a new project which is called IMSS, which stands for Integrated Market Surveillance System. So an IMSS or Integrated Market Surveillance System will now be set up at the RBI for a lot of the digital processes, such as, I'll tell you what all they will be doing. All of it will be online digital methods. Market surveillance, MIS, which is Management Information System, also reports, standard and ad hoc reports, including slicing and dicing of data and compliance monitoring. This is, and all of this will now be done. So the RBI will now choose the final vendor before starting with this prospect. So I'm done with all the news from the business except the most important one. It's really crucial for you guys. Please study on this carefully. HDFC, I had told you some time back, Aditya Puri, who's one of the best known banking CEOs in the country. He has also received several bank awards in the past. He is set to retire. His term is going to end very soon. So the company requires a new MD. They have already chosen the successor. This is massive news. So please write down, his name is Mr. Shashidhar Jagdishan, who has spent a good 24 years with the company. He became the company's chief financial officer or CFO back in 2008. A total of 24 years with this company. So he played a critical role during the growth of this company. He is actually a chartered accountant. He was a science graduate but became a CA later on. Also done a management degree from the University of Sheffield, which is in Yorkshire in the United Kingdom. Before HDFC, he has also worked with Deutsche Bank AG, the German banking giant. So basically from October, that's when Mr. Puri retires. He will be taking up. The moment his thing was announced, and I had told you earlier that there was a 4% rise in the Sensex of the HDFC. These two news are actually related. So to be precise, there's a 3.9% rise, taking the shares to 39.45. So they closed on a very high figure at the end of the day. So I'm done with the business page. There is some side news from the world of theatre where theatre doyen Mr. Ibrahim Alkazi, who was actually the father of another legendary theatre personality, Faisal Alkazi. He has passed away at the age of 94. a former director of the NSD, he was, which is National School of Drama. In fact, he groomed several of the top stars in the country, such as Mr. Girish Karnad, Mr. Nasruddin Shah, and Mr. Ompuri. All of them emerged during the time he was the head. More than 50 plays he has directed, including Tughlaq and Andha Yug, which are two of the most popular and powerful ones. Little bit from the world of sport, the reigning MotoGP. So there's Formula One, which is for cars. There's also MotoGP, which is for bikes. So the present champion, Mr. Marc Marquez, he will miss the Czech MotoGP, which is going to be soon in the country of Czech Republic. So Pakistan and England Test series is soon to begin. So that should be a big one. But Australia has called off a T20 series it was supposed to play with the West Indies. There's some news from the world of football. Iker Casillas, the legendary goalkeeper from Real Madrid, last played for Portuguese club FC Porto, World Cup winner with Spain as the captain, twice European champion with Spain, winner of the Champions League a few times with Real Madrid, and also won La Liga 5 times with Real Madrid. Legendary captain with 167 matches for the national team. He has announced his retirement from all forms of professional football. Sticking to football, one of the law-making bodies, not the official ones, but one of the consultants, which is the IFAB, International Football Association Board, which is affiliated to the FIFA, they have suggested that deliberate coughing by footballers. I don't know if anybody's doing that. That's really awful. But if anybody's doing that, then there should be a straight red card for the player. Now, I'm going to end today's session on with a really, not today's session, today's Hindu. I will also do a bit from the Times of India, but I'm going to end today's Hindu with a really important piece of news. This is both sport as well as international politics, because Vivo, IPL is called Vivo Ipl the last 2 years. 2018, Vivo signed a deal which will run till 2022, a 5-year contract. So they've already completed 2 years, but this year it was set to be Vivo Ipl. The IPL board had clarified it was okay. However, there were a lot of protests from boards such as the CAIT, which is a traders' consortium. They had written to the Home Ministry citing that Chinese companies should not be allowed to be sponsors. In fact, even companies with Chinese funding, even if they were Indian companies or foreign companies, but with Chinese funding, they should not be allowed to work here. Right, so there was a lot of embarrassment that was going on. BCCI couldn't go out of its way to be political and axe Vivo. That would perhaps not be the right thing, but Vivo, fortunately for all parties, Vivo has come up itself to end the IPL association, because they what they have cited is not political reasons, but actually pure financial reasons, because the IPL this year is said to be held without crowd, so there's a feeling that the income is lower and the views could be lower. Also, being in the United Arab Emirates, they're not sure how much money will be earned, so they do not want to spend the amount of money which they were supposed. So that is the official line that has come up. We do not know what has happened internally, but it is, I think, the best situation. Otherwise, there could have been much more embarrassment. So, in fact, the IPL might come up with a new contract from 2020, asking other companies to pitch in as sponsors. Right? There's no official news yet on who will replace Vivo as the sponsors. So there is an article by Mr. Suresh Menon, who's among the top cricket columnists. He has mentioned how this is a good move by all parties. It saves us from, possible embarrassment. He's also spoken about other companies which have Chinese investment, which are part sponsors, not title sponsors, but they're part sponsors of the IPL. So that includes companies such as Big Basket, Byju's, Dream 11, Flipkart, Ola, Market, Make My Trip, Oyo, Paytm, Policy Bazaar, Quicker, Snapdeal, Swiggy, and Zomato. So all of them are some way or the other associated with the IPL, and of course with our daily lives. So they could also be hampered. Their sponsorships could also be hampered this way. So I'm looking for any news on any other possible sponsors. There is none as yet, as confirmed by Mr. Arun Dhumal, who's the BCCI secretary. One thing which is really everybody is thinking is, can 60 matches of the IPL be played in just three venues? Because it's just Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Sharjah. So that is a big question mark that everyone is having. So this is a far greater challenge. IPL has been held earlier abroad, 2009 in South Africa, 2014 in the UAE. 2014 was partly, not completely. Both the years was due to elections, but this year it's a different thing altogether. And this year it's just three grounds. So for 60 matches, that is something everybody will need to look into. Right, so I'm done with the Hindu. Give me a moment. I'll get my Times of India for yesterday, and then I will end the session. Do not miss today's session at 2 p.m. where I will be discussing today's newspaper, which is 6th of August 2020. So I will only be touching upon those topics which are not mentioned on the Hindu. So Delhi gyms and yoga centers did not open yesterday, although it was understood that will happen. There was a children's bookshop which was expected to close down at the Alaknanda market in South Delhi called Eureka. So a lot of bookstores did tragically close down during the lockdowns, but this is going to restart. This is back, so that is great news. Something which is worrying in the state of Haryana is that about a third of all COVID deaths, even though the total fatality rate has been low in Haryana, but among the deaths, a third did not have any comorbidities. I mean, the general view is that, of experts, is that it's widely accepted that COVID-19, the virus alone may not kill you, but it's other comorbidities that do. But about a third did not have any other serious comorbidities. So this can be a worrying sign for the state of Haryana and generally for everyone. So there is this new Israeli technology. I was telling you how rapid tests are working on between India and Israel. But there's this new one which has started. So that, of course, is less than a minute the target. But here, 20,000 have been tested where this can give you results in 30 minutes. So in 6 locations of New Delhi, this has actually begun. This is joint effort by the Israeli ministry and the DRDO. So there's actually the DDRD, not DRDO, my mistake. It's of the DDRD, which is an Israeli body, Directorate of Defense Research and Development, headed by Commander Yaniv Meirman, who is leading this thing. Right, most of it is, there is news about the municipal elections in New Delhi, which will take place in 2022. So AAP, of course, you must be aware, have been in power in the city, in the state government, but BJP has been in power at the MCT for quite some time. So AAP is planning ways to take on BJP in 2022. That should be could be a close contest. We don't really know as yet. Okay, so I had told you earlier about a hashtag which is Bounce Back India, where we share some heartwarming stories from the different parts of the country. So there is something from Andhra Pradesh and Telangana which I want to discuss. I'll read out to you the headline: Masks made of leaves saved forest dwellers from virus. This is really interesting. When people face mask shortage, these tribals delved into traditional knowledge. Traditional knowledge can often be really beneficial. So the director of an NGO called Nature, his name is Mr. S. Balaraju, he has said that 15,000 people are using these leaf masks. These are the vulnerable tribal groups around the Eastern Ghats. You know, we have mountains, Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats, which flank the Deccan Plateau near the coastline. So they are primarily on the eastern coast. which other forest they are located in? It's mainly the Bhadrachalam forest, which is primarily in Andhra Pradesh, but also cutting into Telangana. Right. So these tribals are located in Nallamala, Yeramala, and Araku. Araku, of course, very famous for its views, and also for some, I think, a variety of coffee. I'm not sure, but this is in Andhra Pradesh, and of course, the forests of Adilabad, Khammam, and Warangal, which are in Telangana. So I'll repeat the names: Nallamala, Yeramala, and Araku in Andhra Pradesh, and Adilabad, Khammam, and Warangal in Telangana. So who are these tribals? I'll name you the names of the tribals. They are the Chenchus, Konda Reddis, Gonds. Gonds are spread out in number of states. Gutti Koyas, Bondas, uh, Parangi Poraja, Mulias, Kodhu, Gadabas, Savaras, and Yanadis. There's also the Gutti Koya tribals. They are using large leaves, which can actually give you protection for as long as 5 hours. So the Sarpanch of one of these villages, which is Iragai in the Araku Valley Mandal, the name of the Sarpanch is Mr. Nadala Butki. I'll read out to you exactly his quotation because that will give you an idea. He says the traditional leaf masks are made mainly from Pongamia. Traditionally, Pongamia leaf bowls are popularly used here. The bowls are converted to masks after attaching them to natural fiber strings. There's also a youth leader from Ganela, Mr. Korra Addu. He has said that how the government has helped them, but there have still been shortages. So that is where they have improvised on these methods. Right. Most of the rest is pretty similar. The browser Xiaomi has been banned by the government, so this could lead to problems in some couple of these MI phones. The MI community has also been banned by the government. This app. So on the lighter news in Gurugram, several homeowners are doubling up with incentives to attract domestic workers once again, because many of the domestic workers have, of course, deserted the city. Yeah, there was something from Haryana, the state of Haryana, which I had forgotten to discuss with you when I was discussing the Hindu, but this can be really important. So let me quickly get into this. So the Chief Minister of Haryana, Mr. Manohar Lal Khattar, who's the Chief Minister for the second consecutive time, he of course is from the BJP. He has come up with a new scheme called the Parivar Pehchan Patra. So what is this? As the name suggests, it's a letter which gives proof about the your identity. So he's going. All the welfare schemes. So there are multiple welfare schemes in any state or at the center. So he says that welfare schemes have to be implemented using this Parivar Pehchan Patra. And he says that this PPP, as it's known as Parivar Pehchan Patra, would end up corruption and red tapeism. So a couple of new things are also coming up because that's what he spoke from Panchkula. That's where this thing took place. Panchkula is right outside Chandigarh. So it serves as the residential complex for several leaders of Haryana state. So 2020 he has announced will be celebrated or commemorated as Sushasan Sanakap Varsh, or the year of good governance. There is another initiative which is into e-governance, and that is aimed at farmers. Will be helpful for farmers a lot. It's known as Meri Fasal Mera Byora Yojana. This will lead to digitization. Even the revenue records will be digitized, and a new portal is to be launched. Which it is already there, this new portal, but it will be further digitized. It's known as HUM, or Haryana Udyam Memorandum. So a separate department will also be set up now called CRID, which is Citizen Resources Information Department, which will now look into all these schemes, but also the PPP, especially the, as I said, Parivar Pehchan Patra. So that should be beneficial to about 56 lakh families. Data of 18.19 lakh families have been prepared, but more need to be done by the end of this year. The additional 20 lakh more Pehchan Patras will now be created. right? So that is pretty much it from my side from yesterday's newspaper. Today at 2 p.m. I'm going to do cover today's newspaper. I'll keep the session open for a few minutes so that you can come up with any doubts you have on any of the topics. This is my code just to remind you guys, AD09. What are you waiting for? Like, share, and subscribe to this. Nowadays, every day, so many messages stock up, by mail. One has to keep deleting messages. That's a really important task. Fair enough. Nice interacting with you guys. See you all in a couple of hours this time, barely an hour and a half away at 2 p.m. for today's newspaper analysis. Right? Thank you so much. See you all very soon.